It started with that look, that smug, knowing smirk Piers Morgan gets when he knows he's about to say something that will make the entire internet combust. Sitting across from his interviewer, calm, unbothered, like a man holding a match over a gasoline spill. And then he dropped it. The comment, the one that detonated everything. Overnight, 57,000 complaints flooded into V, all demanding his head. 57,000 people screaming for him to be erased from television because he dared to say out loud what millions had already been whispering in private. But what happened next is the part that still makes people uneasy. Because according to reports, Meghan Markle didn't go through PR teams. She didn't issue a public statement. She didn't defend herself openly. Instead, she allegedly went straight behind the scenes and contacted his bosses directly, pushing for him to be fired, quietly, privately, applying pressure where no one could see it. And Piers didn't even know until it was already done, until he was gone, fired, silenced, just like that.
She was never pregnant at all. Instead, the videos embolden conspiracy theorists. They're calling it Megspiracy, and the pair are being subjected to yet more merciless ridicule. Another lie. And by the way, Meghan, if you don't like me calling you a liar, just sue me, and we'll go through all this in court. For Harry and Meghan, it's more a case of never reign and never abstain, especially when it comes to nauseating self-publicity, which invariably backfires. Sometimes, I don't know, words seem superfluous really. Meghan shared that bedside twerking video, taken shortly apparently before she gave birth to Lilibet. Remember the child that she named after the Queen's private nickname that was given to by Duke of Edinburgh, without getting permission from the Queen.
Your opinion is irrelevant, because I'm a baby mama. I can do this what I want to turn up. She's a baby mama. She gon' get that baby mama. She gon' put it on. She gon' get that baby mama.
In the end, I was required to apologise for disbelieving Meghan Markle.
In this case, about whether you think the birth was real, whether you think there was a surrogate, whether you think Meghan was wearing a moon bump, the fact is, Harry and Meghan lied. Buckingham Palace lied on their behalf. There was a complete cover-up over the birth of Prince Archie.
Harry and Meghan, ongoing debate, their war with the royal family, war against the monarchy, their specific, constant referencing to the fact that they believe they were driven out of here because of racism in Britain. Meghan wrote private letters to King Charles naming two royals who she accuses of taking part in those supposedly troubling conversations about Archie's skin colour. I was rejected by Meghan Markle. It's so utterly ridiculous. And yet people like you promote these scurrilous rumours.
But there's got to be a reason that you're so angry
at your heart, no, I'm not angry with it. Here's my thing with it. I'm angry at their hypocrisy. I'm very angry about the ongoing attacks and diminishing of the reputation of the royal family and the monarchy.
Let that sink in for a second. A woman who lectures the world about free speech, about standing up to bullies, about bravery and truth, was allegedly working behind closed doors to end a journalist's career because he didn't believe her story, because he refused to nod along to a narrative he felt didn't add up. And what makes it even more uncomfortable is what Piers said afterward, with that barely hidden satisfaction in his voice. He said he wasn't canceled. Not really, because truth, he said, has a way of catching up. And according to him, the receipts he's holding are brutal. What shocked him most wasn't the criticism. It was the desperation, the lengths Meghan allegedly went to just to control the narrative.
Meghan filed a formal complaint with ITV, a British station, over Piers Morgan's comments about her. That was before Morgan's sudden exit as host of Good Morning Britain.
This wasn't about hurt feelings. This wasn't about being offended by a TV comment. This was, as Piers described it, a calculated behind-the-scenes effort to destroy someone who wouldn't play along with a carefully scripted fairy tale. And here's where the story stops being uncomfortable and starts becoming disturbing. Every inconsistency Piers pointed out, every timeline that didn't line up, every question he asked, none of it has ever been properly answered. Not by Meghan, not by Harry, not by the palace, not by anyone. And when someone works this hard to silence critics instead of simply proving them wrong, it forces a question no one wants to ask. What are they hiding? Because at some point, coincidence turns into pattern. And Piers didn't just see one crack, he saw many.
From where I sit, because clearly she was trying to put huge pressure on my bosses to take action against me.
Why else are you being sort of suspicious and secretive around labor and birth? And people theorized and claimed that the couple needed time to stage a story because Meghan didn't actually deliver the children.
This is where the pregnancy narrative enters the picture and where things stop feeling normal. Catherine, Princess of Wales, stepped out of the Lindo wing just hours after giving birth. Heels, hair done, makeup flawless, holding her newborn for the world to see. She did it 3 times. Calm, transparent, not to show off, but because that's the tradition. That's openness. That's consistency. Meghan did the opposite. Her pregnancy became a mystery box where the story kept changing. One day, the bump was massive, round, impossible to miss. She cradled it constantly, moved slowly, lowered herself into chairs like she was carrying something fragile. And then, days later, sometimes the same week, photos appeared where the bump looked smaller, flatter, sitting completely differently. And before anyone tries to dismiss this as angles or clothing, royal watchers aren't stupid. These people have studied royal pregnancies for decades, under relentless cameras. They know what pregnancy looks like, and the movement made it worse. In some clips, Meghan moved carefully, protectively, like every step required thought. In others, she was climbing stairs quickly, bending down effortlessly, turning sharply, moving like nothing was holding her back. Pregnancy affects everyone differently, yes, but this wasn't gradual change. This was drastic.
Ironic that you should be entitled not to believe somebody if you don't want to.
If you could speak to Meghan Markle today, what would be the tenor, the tone of that conversation, and what
These weren't small differences. They were extreme shifts within days, sometimes hours. One moment she looked so pregnant she could barely move. The next she looked agile enough to do gymnastics in 5-inch heels. People noticed. Screenshots spread. Side-by-side comparisons exploded online. This wasn't one bad photo. It was a repeating pattern. Pregnant when the cameras were perfect. Suddenly mobile when they weren't. And once the internet locks onto something, it doesn't let go. Forums exploded. Comment sections filled with the same question over and over. How does a bump behave like that? How does someone move like that one day and completely differently the next? The thought no one wanted to say out loud started forming. And then came the alleged documents Piers referenced. Documents that, if even partially accurate, didn't just raise questions. They blew the public story apart. Scheduling notes, appointments, engagement logs, days where Meghan was allegedly recorded attending events in London while hospital appointments were logged elsewhere. You can't be in 2 places at once. Pregnancy timelines don't bend. You can't reschedule being 9 months pregnant. That's when the word surrogate started circulating louder than ever. And suddenly, people weren't just asking how. They were asking who knew. Then there was the home birth story. Carefully planted. Perfect for Meghan's image. Natural. Private. Rejecting royal tradition. Frogmore Cottage. The public accepted it instantly. It sounded exactly like her. And then May 6, 2019 arrived. Without explanation, she gave birth at Portland Hospital instead. Not the home birth. A hospital. The palace released a statement, then corrected it. Because Harry and Meghan had given different information. No explanation, no clarification, just silence. And no one questions hospital births medically. The issue wasn't the hospital. It was the sudden story flip with no acknowledgement. When you build a narrative so publicly, people expect at least a sentence explaining why it changed. There was nothing. Silence. And silence invites scrutiny. It sent people digging backward, replaying interviews, rechecking timelines, questioning how much of the story had ever been true. And instead of calming speculation, Meghan's continued public discussions about motherhood, podcasts, pregnancy stories, and photos only poured fuel on the fire. Every appearance brought the rumors back stronger. Because when one big promise disappears without explanation, people start wondering what else might vanish just as quietly. And that's when the victim narrative started to crack. During the Oprah interview, Meghan painted herself as abandoned, isolated, trapped inside a cold institution that didn't care about her well-being. It worked. People cried for her. But then alleged internal memos surfaced, and they told a completely different story. According to those documents, staff were ordered to accommodate every request immediately. Schedules rearranged, commitments canceled, double shifts worked, last-minute wardrobe changes handled, constant unscheduled demands met. This wasn't neglect, this was indulgence. And the most damaging detail? Meetings Meghan allegedly declined to attend. Briefings she chose not to show up for, later reframed publicly as exclusion, as doors being slammed shut. But the doors were open. She chose not to walk through them. That isn't victimhood. That's manipulation. Piers hammered this point relentlessly. This wasn't oppression. This was special treatment turned into a weapon. Staff bent protocol, exhausted themselves. And after all that, Meghan went on television and told the world she'd been abandoned. If those memos are real, and no one has denied they exist, they don't show cruelty toward Meghan. They show exhausted staff trying desperately to satisfy someone who was never going to be satisfied. satisfied. Then came the silence, the most damning part of all. With all these allegations, inconsistencies, supposed evidence, Meghan said nothing. No statement, no clarification, no legal threats, nothing. For someone known to correct stories instantly and sue newspapers, that silence was deafening. And Harry? Completely absent. The man who built his entire brand around protecting his wife from media abuse said nothing. No denial, no defense. And in the court of public opinion, that doesn't look dignified. It looks like avoidance. Once doubt set in, people rewatched everything, including Oprah, frame by frame. The pauses, the perfectly timed tears, the emotional beats that rose and fell with theatrical precision. Piers lined that interview up with Meghan's other appearances. Same cadence, same pacing, same emotional rhythm. And once people saw it, they couldn't unsee it. Vulnerability stopped feeling spontaneous. It started feeling practiced, and that's the danger of being too polished. Eventually, people stop seeing emotion and start seeing technique. Piers' most explosive claim was this. He said motherhood became Meghan's ultimate shield. By centering her image on pregnancy and fragility, questioning inconsistencies became morally forbidden. Criticism turned into cruelty. And culturally, that works. Society protects pregnant women instinctively. Piers argued that instinct was being used deliberately. Every time pressure increased, the focus shifted back to suffering. Conversation over. And when people finally asked the question that changes everything, it wasn't screamed, it was whispered. If the story is real, if nothing is hidden, why does it need this much protection? When all the pieces were laid out, the photo inconsistencies, the documents, the story changes, the silence, this stopped being about pregnancy photos. It became about trust. And once trust cracks, it doesn't heal. Every future word gets questioned. Every emotional appeal meets skepticism instead of sympathy. That's the real damage. Not one accusation, but the collapse of credibility. And that's exactly what Piers Morgan set out to do. Not to prove one claim beyond doubt, but to plant enough questions that belief would never fully return. And judging by the conversation today, mission accomplished. And here's the part people don't talk about enough, the aftermath. Because once that seed of doubt is planted, it doesn't just sit there quietly. It grows. It changes how every single future moment is perceived. Every time Meghan appears on a stage, on a podcast, in an interview, there's a split second where part of the audience isn't listening to feel empathy anymore. They're listening to catch something, a pause that feels rehearsed, a detail that doesn't quite line up, a story that sounds familiar because they've heard a version of it before. And that's a brutal place to end up, especially for someone whose entire public identity now depends on being believed. What made it worse was how aggressively criticism was shut down early on. Anyone who raised questions wasn't just disagreed with. They were labeled, attacked, accused of cruelty, misogyny, racism, or worse. That worked for a while. It scared people into silence. But over time, that tactic started backfiring because when every question is treated like abuse, people stop asking publicly and start analyzing privately. Screenshots replace arguments, timelines replace opinions, and eventually, even supporters begin to feel uneasy, not because they want to doubt, but because they're being asked to ignore things that don't make sense. And the irony is, if even one clear, calm, detailed explanation had been given early on, most of this would have died instantly. A simple clarification, a timeline, a medical explanation, something. But instead, there was silence. And silence, especially when paired with extreme control over narrative, doesn't signal confidence. It signals fear of opening doors that can't be closed again. Harry's role in all of this only deepened the discomfort. This is a man who has spoken endlessly about trauma, about truth, about fighting misinformation. And yet, when the most personal, explosive claims surfaced about his own family, he vanished. No righteous anger, no emotional defense, no this is absolutely false, nothing. And people noticed. They noticed because it didn't match the image he had worked so hard to build. A husband who would burn the world down to protect his wife suddenly chose quiet. And that quiet spoke louder than any statement ever could. So now, years later, the situation has flipped completely. Where once Meghan was given the benefit of the doubt, now she has to earn it. Every story is weighed. Every emotional moment is examined. Not because people are cruel, but because trust was spent too freely and never replenished. That's the real fallout. Not headlines, not outrage, but a permanent layer of skepticism that never fully goes away. Because once people feel like they were carefully guided instead of honestly informed, they don't forget it. They remember. And they watch closer the next time. Closer the next time. Closer the next time. Closer.